Coming up on Bridge City News, Lethbridge sees an increase in coronavirus cases, including those at a seniors complex and another at a childcare facility. A letter has been sent out to union members warning of mold issues at the Melcor Centre in Lethbridge. We have details. And political journalist Brian Lilly explains a new way Alberta could get its resources to Tidewater, and it involves Alaska.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. There's an outbreak of COVID-19 in the Lethbridge region. One involves a church, the other a child daycare centre, and a third at a seniors facility. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly's in the newsroom and has been covering the story. Ainsley, what's the latest?
More than 20 new cases of COVID-19 have been declared at a Lethbridge area church. The AHS says that they won't reveal the name of the church in order to protect patient confidentiality. Now, in addition to the church, a daycare center has also declared an outbreak in Lethbridge. The Children's House Childcare Society announced 3 positive cases. The group released a statement to BCN saying, staff and children have been sent home to isolate and have been advised to book testing. The center is now closed while Alberta Health Services carries out the necessary contact tracing and testing. The center will remain closed until we have been advised by AHS that it is safe to reopen and additional deep cleaning of the center has been completed. There is also allegedly a case of COVID-19 at a seniors residence in Lethbridge. The Extendicare Fairmont Park sent an email to its staff saying that one staff member tested positive for the virus and that there are no residents with symptoms of the virus. Extendicare says that the outbreak will be in effect until October 15th. As of Tuesday, Alberta Health reported 18 new cases of COVID-19. There are 29 active cases in Lethbridge. Hal?
Thanks so much, Ainsley. The province says there are now around 1,910 active COVID-19 cases in Alberta, including 78 in total here in the South Zone. The Government of Alberta and Alberta Health Services employees who work at the Melcor Centre in downtown Lethbridge have been notified by their union that high levels of mold have been detected in the centre due to repeated incidents of flooding. A letter dated September 24th states that air quality tests last January showed one type of mold was found to be at 3 times the normal level. While this level is below what is considered hazardous by Occupational Health and Safety, the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees is concerned that long-term exposure could put their members at risk. AUPE says the province and AHS need to address this problem right away.
We have about 230 members working in the building, both with the Government of Alberta and Alberta Health Services. We've had dozens of members that have told us that they're experiencing health and respiratory issues, including recurring coughs and colds and headaches, migraines. And again, these are all symptoms of mold. The fear is even made worse now when we're living in what we're living with this pandemic, with a virus that attacks the respiratory system. So this is no time to be risking the health of our Alberta workers.
AHS and the province are currently in a long-term lease with Melcor Centre that cannot be broken. Since 2014, there have been around 8 floods, 2 of which were in May and June of this year. The Melcor Centre, formerly known as the Lethbridge Centre, was originally built in 1975. The second retail level was added in 1988. The province is asking about 115 fish and wildlife enforcement officers to take on more dangerous workload without getting paid for it. Now, beginning November 1st, fish and wildlife officers will have to respond to life-threatening situations, including homicides, mass shootings, and domestic violence calls in rural areas. But the province says their classification and pay rates won't be altered to reflect the job they're being asked to do. We spoke with the union spokesperson who represents these officers, who say the province has upset the officers who are part of the Rural Crime Initiative.
It's all part of an initiative to improve rural crime fighting in rural areas, basically. When the RCMP are in trouble, they can be like a 911 call. Then we'll give the fish and wildlife officers a few months of training, some new automatic weapons. And the plan also had in writing that, okay, this is now much more dangerous work than you were doing before. We will remunerate you better, comparable to the RCMP. so on average, an RCMP officer would make $15,000 to $25,000 a year more. This can be highly dangerous work. It's the kind of work that in the RCMP do it. It's the highest divorce rates, the highest PTSD levels, and that sort of thing. So about a week ago, the pay bans were put out, and the government said, "Oh, we looked at the work you guys are going to be doing helping the RCMP. It's really not that much different than you were doing before, so we're not going to pay you anymore. Sorry." So, broken promise, boom.
Now, we reached out to the province, and they told us in a written statement that Alberta's Public Service Commission completed a job classification review, finding the additional duties would not substantively change the job function. With new work, we know adjustments may be made, and if there are substantive changes to the job descriptions after 6 months, they can be submitted for review. For the first time in history, more than 11,000 doctors have registered to practice medicine here in Alberta. According to the province, that represents a net gain of 246 doctors from 2019, or a 2.3% gain. By gender, Alberta will have a net gain of 173 female doctors and 73 male GPs. In a release today, Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro had this to say: Alberta pays more than any other province, has lower taxes, and now has the most attractive compensation package available for rural and remote doctors in Canada. In a July survey by the Alberta Medical Association, 87% of physicians were making changes to their practices due to the funding framework put in place by Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro. Around 42% of Alberta doctors were considering moving their practices to other provinces. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team has been called in to investigate the death of a 72-year-old man. Police say last Sunday, EMS responded to and located the man intoxicated and passed out on a sidewalk in front of the Fort Macleod Public Library. He was taken to hospital for treatment. Police could not locate a person to release him into the care of, so he was put into a holding cell at the Fort Macleod RCMP detachment. The next morning around 8 a.m., he was released, and RCMP officers transported the man at his request to a nearby home and left him with another person. Later that night, just before 10 p.m., police responded to the same house where they found the man located dead inside. The Director of Law Enforcement has been notified, and ACERT will lead the investigation. Over $200,000 worth of stolen property, along with 63 firearms, have been recovered in Taber. RCMP say 5 people were arrested following the alert investigation. Police say the vehicle thefts occurred throughout southern Alberta, including Taber, Lethbridge, Bow Island, Seven Persons, and Coaldale. The stolen property recovered included 7 vehicles, a utility trailer, lawnmowers, compressors, generators, and power tools. 5 people ranging in ages 20 to 72 face a total of 76 offenses, including criminal charges such as trafficking of stolen property and firearms. Operation Red Nose announced today that they will not be providing their life-saving ride service during the 2020 holiday season. National Development Coordinator for Operation Red Nose, Marie-Chantal Fortin, says the decision to cancel this year's service nationwide was a difficult one, but not a surprising one.
The current health situation makes it quite complicated for our volunteers to be able to provide the safe ride service. And so we, after very long discussions and consideration and talking with our local host organizations and sponsors, everything like that, we decided that it was better this year to cancel the service itself. However, we're going to still have a road safety awareness campaign.
Last year, 526 volunteers chauffeured 874 rides in the Lethbridge area and raised just over $21,000 in donations. Staff from the Lethbridge Conservative Association made their way to a couple of Lethbridge food banks today to hand-deliver donated turkeys. As Micah Quinn explains, the donations came at just the right time.
Busy hands were in motion today as turkeys were donated to the Lethbridge Food Bank and Interfaith Food Bank Society.
We had 25 turkeys donated to the Lethbridge Food Bank and 25 turkeys donated to the Interfaith Food Bank through a fundraiser that we did for the Lethbridge Conservative Association, where people could donate funds to the Lethbridge Conservative Association and purchase a turkey either for themselves or with the option to donate to the food banks in the city as well.
The executive director of the Interfaith Food Bank Society, Danielle McIntyre says the timing of the donations is perfect.
It is the time to be thankful and a great opportunity for us to allow our families to celebrate Thanksgiving safely at home together with their households. So we're very grateful to the Conservative Association and Rachel Harder's office for making this gift today. And we just know our families are going to be extremely happy to receive such a nice meal for Thanksgiving.
McIntyre says the turkeys will be distributed through a hamper program.
So our hamper programs have a meat unit that goes out with them, and the hampers are for 5 to 7 days worth of food. And so at Thanksgiving time, we try to throw in the seasonal turkeys if we have them available. And so this is great timing because we'll have several families that are coming in the next couple days that'll go home with turkeys for Thanksgiving.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Federal Health Minister Patty Hydew and Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Theresa Tam are pleading with Canadians to limit their turkey time only to the people you live with this year. Tam says being with friends and family during Thanksgiving can be comforting, but this year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it is not safe.
Thanksgiving is a special time for many Canadians, a celebration centered on visiting and enjoying meals with families, friends, and neighbors. University students travel home, and faith groups gather in thanks. People often head indoors as temperatures drop and the weather becomes more unpredictable. We will be able to return to these cozy indoor gatherings one day, but while we live with COVID-19, we all need to think carefully about our Thanksgiving plans this year to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and communities. This is very hard because friends and families give us comfort. It might feel safer to gather with them, but this is in fact a false sense of security.
Under questioning from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says it's important that life-saving vaccines are available to Canadians at no cost.
We deeply cherish our universal healthcare system, and that means that things like life-saving vaccines are free for Canadians. We indeed put forward a committee of independent experts to help counsel the government on the best way to ensure that vaccines are distributed fairly, equitably, and in the right priority way so that Canadians can be as safe as possible as these vaccines are discovered. I can highlight, however, the extraordinary work of our procurement minister, who has ensured that we have a great access to vaccines from around the world.
If the Parliamentary Budget Officer is correct, only $50 million of the $655 million in new sickness benefits will go to the people who actually have COVID-19. Yves Giroux estimates the bulk of the funds spent this year and next will go to people who have to take time off for other illnesses. His office warns, however, the estimates regarding measures to replace the Canada Emergency Response Benefit are subject to the pandemic's path and COVID-19 case counts. Supporters of U.S. President Donald Trump at an early voting site in Northern Virginia say they're strongly supporting their president after his hospitalization for the novel coronavirus.
I'm delighted that he's going back to work again, and he's just a workaholic guy. And so to me, unfortunate that it happened, but it happened, and I think he's setting a good role model example that you just come through it, you continue with life, and you do your job.
I don't believe in wearing the mask either, but I will out of respect to other people. Each person has their own right. This is the United States of America. Do I believe in the coronavirus? Absolutely not.
He's got the best medical care any person in the world does, basically. He's got a team of doctors around him, and he's got, the vice president there with me. I don't think there's any reason to think there'd be an effect on cognitive abilities.
Dr. Anthony Fauci says professional sports leagues and U.S. college programs are managing the risks associated with COVID-19 infections better than those in the White House, which led to President Donald Trump's illness.
I mean, what you saw there in the White House, I don't know if you saw sometime that picture from above of everybody crowded together with no masks. I think if you look at the protocols in football, when you're not on the field, you wear a mask. When you go on the field, you do testing on everybody, and then you do surveillance testing. That's very similar in many respects to what many of the colleges are doing, even outside of sports.
This year has been so challenging in many ways. We've had to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. There's still a drug crisis in many cities across North America. There have also been devastating wildfires on the U.S. West Coast and hurricanes. As we hear in this next report, Samaritan's Purse volunteers showed the love of Christ recently to hurting people affected by Hurricane Sally in Alabama.
The winds, literally, I don't think they stopped for 8 hours. It was scary. The wind was very loud and roaring.
You felt like that the wall was just going to come in on you.
About midnight, it really started ripping about 100 miles an hour. By 3 a.m., it sounded like a freight train.
Trees down everywhere over houses and cars, and my husband said it looks like a war zone. It's just really devastating.
This hurricane was Sally. They were predicting like 20 inches of rain. I know it was a lot because I had water lapping up to my steps at my home.
We've been through hurricanes before. We're not new to this, but the intensity was something that we just weren't quite prepared for. Here at First Baptist Foley, we're so grateful for Samaritan's Purse coming in and being a major part of this recovery effort. We've been blessed by watching volunteers come in and willingly give their time and their energy to be able to make Jesus known in our community, and it means so much to us.
Today, Samaritan's Purse came out, and not only did they help us in our yard, they helped in my mother's, my brother's, and also our neighbors. My husband is law enforcement and my son, and to have Samaritan's Purse come in and remove all of those trees at no cost is such an amazing feeling to know that that is one burden off of us.
I was really impressed to see the volunteers and even an elderly lady out there. I couldn't believe. Really says a lot about her heart and all the others. And I appreciate them helping us.
There's a lot of despair. You could see it in some of the homeowners as we start showing up, and you could see this huge weight lifted off their shoulders. What I see here is a lot of opportunity for us to continue showing in actions Christ's love is still very much alive. I'm Rick Cerezo. I'm originally from New York City and currently living in Adamsville, Tennessee. With me is my wife, Bonnie. We've been married for 29 years. We are benefactors of Samaritan's Purse generosity and kindness. Last year in October, our town got hit by some pretty serious winds. In rolls in this enormous tractor trailer, and it was just incredible to see the amount of generosity given to our little town and how the actions of Samaritan's Purse rallied the community to start helping one another. We felt it was only right to continue being those hands and feet of Christ wherever Samaritan's Purse might need us.
I really appreciate it. I feel so blessed that they were in our neighborhood, that they came from all over to help us. I know when my situation gets better that I'm going to be paying it forward. And that's what these people are all about, is paying it forward.
When our town was in need and the rally happened, it was amazing to see how quickly we were able to turn things around. And the only way that happens is you take that first step and come on down and volunteer for the day. It could be a half day, it could be for the week. The joy you feel afterwards, it just cannot be compared to anything else.
Great to see the Christian community helping out once again. It was another beautiful day in Lethbridge, lots of sunshine and mild temperatures. Now, if you're looking for some shower activity, good news, some of it's on the way. But when? We'll tell you right after the break. We had close to 20 degrees yet again today, and the warm temperatures will remain for a few more days. Then things will be cooling off a little bit with some shower activity. Jeanette Roche is here now with a complete look at the extended weather forecast.
Partly cloudy skies this evening with an overnight low of 7 degrees and an east wind gusting to 40 kilometers per hour. Tomorrow that temperature could reach as high as 26 with a mix of sun and cloud, but hazy late in the morning and afternoon, and a west wind gusting to 50 Friday, sunshine with a high of 20 degrees expected for Saturday with clouds. A chance of showers for Sunday, high of 12 degrees. That'll feel chilly after this week. Next, Monday and Tuesday, mix of sun and clouds, 16 for Monday, and 18 degrees will be the high for Tuesday. And according to that almanac, the average high this time of year, 17 degrees. The average low, 2 degrees. 30 degrees was our record high, and that was back in 1980. Minus 11 was the low in 1970. Sun rose this morning at 7:41 a.m., and our sunset this evening, 6:57 p.m. Now taking a look to the national forecast. Victoria could see cloudy with foggy patches patches, high of 17 degrees. 17 also expected for Vancouver tomorrow with 40% chance of drizzle in the morning. Edmonton could see a 30% chance of showers, high of 14, and a high of 19 in Calgary with a mix of sun and cloud. Looking to the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon's high 19 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Mix of sun and cloud also expected in Regina with a high of 22. Partly cloudy skies in Winnipeg with a high of 16 degrees. Further east, Toronto could see a 30% chance of showers in the afternoon, a high of 15. 10 degrees only is the high for Ottawa with a 30% chance of showers in the afternoon. Mix of sun and cloud in Montreal with a high of 11 degrees. Fredericton could see a few showers ending in the morning and then foggy patches with a high of 12. 13 degrees expected in Charlottetown with 5 millimeters of rain expected and lots of wind up to 80 kilometers per hour in exposed areas. Halifax could see a few showers in the morning, high of 13 degrees, and 15 is the expected high for St. John's, Newfoundland, with expected rains of 5 to 10 millimeters.
A Calgary-based company will be providing more than 40 million locally made medical masks to Alberta Health Services. The province says the $60 million two-year agreement between Orpix Medical Technologies and the AHS will also create around 100 new jobs. This is the second time the company will be providing masks to government employees. It also began manufacturing masks back in August to AHS staff. An independent testing lab will review the masks to ensure they meet international clinical standards. Now, prior to COVID-19, AHS used 33,000 masks per day. Now they average around 600,000 masks each and every day. Canada currently recycles less than 10% of the 3 million tons of plastic we produce each and every year. Federal Environment Minister Jonathan Wilkinson announced today that 6 single-use plastic items that aren't easily recycled will be banned by the end of next year. They include plastic straws, stir sticks, and carry-out bags. Wilkinson says the surge in takeout containers being used during COVID-19 was a factor in putting together the new rules. A new study finds the top priority for business owners following the first wave of the coronavirus is to get their financial house in order. The study by the Business Development Bank of Canada says that includes reducing operating costs and improving cash flow. Analysts say small to medium businesses saw a drop of 76% in revenue and profits during the pandemic. Around 39% took on debt to survive. Economists say businesses are more in debt today than they were 6 months ago and are therefore more fragile. The Spanish government has unveiled a plan to boost the country out of a recession by spending close to $219 billion of European Union funds to reshape its economy. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says he expects the plan will create around 800,000 jobs over the next 3 years. It focuses mainly on green energy and a digital economy. It comes in response to a predicted 11.2% contraction in the Spanish economy this year due to the pandemic. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The markets rebounded slightly today on news that there may be a potential stimulus package coming. The TSX was up 192 points to finish at 16,428. The Dow was up 530 points to 28,303. The S&P 500 was up 58 points to 3419, and the Nasdaq was up 210 points to 11,364. West Texas Intermediate oil was down 68 cents to $39.99 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 7 cents to $2.59. Gold was up $9.65 to $18.8783 US an ounce, and silver was up 75 cents to $23.81 US an ounce. Wheat is at $255 per metric ton, barley's at $249, canola's at $4.92, and corn is at $269 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.03 to $113.10. Feeder cattle were up 35 cents to $137.88, and lean hogs were up 70 cents to $64.58. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the last 24 hours to $75.54 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the AHS says there's been an outbreak of COVID-19 in our city. Cases of the virus have shown up at the Children's House Child Care Society, the Fairmont Park Seniors Facility, and around 20 cases at a church. The province will not reveal the church as to protect the patient's confidentiality. If Joe Biden is elected president of the United States next month, it could be bad news for our province's energy sector. Political reporter Brian Lilly will explain next. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Get out and explore nature. The Helen Schuler Nature Center is offering guided 1-hour field trips for all ages. Visit lethbridge.ca/things to do. Click on Nature Center and follow the events page, where you'll find a list of featured tours that will introduce you to amazing plants and animals found right here in Lethbridge. Cost is $25. Book online for your tour today. Something new for anime fans. Every weekend, Nika Yuko Japanese Garden is hosting an Anime Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Watch videos on anime creation in the pavilion and learn fun trivia about your favorite anime characters. For more information, visit nikayuko.com. Bikers Building Bridges is hosting their second annual Halloween Drive-Through Trunk or Treat, taking place at Exhibition Park's North parking lot on Halloween night going from 5:30 to 9 p.m. Come out for a spooky good time. Decorate your vehicle and hand out candy safely. For details about this event and to register your trunk, visit bikersbuildingbridges.com. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
It is a moment many have been waiting for a long time. The Trump administration has given American approval for what is being billed as the A2A Railway. It could be Alberta to Alaska or Alaska to Alberta. To talk about this in more detail is our political reporter, Brian Lilly, joining me once again from Toronto. Now, Brian, the question is, will the Trudeau Liberals approve the project, which could give Alberta Resources faster access to tidewater?
Well, you've got two big questions there. What do you call it? Alberta to Alaska or Alaska to Alberta? I mean, that question depends on where you're coming from. If you're from Alberta, it's obviously Alberta to Alaska, and, you reverse it for the other way. Reminds me of a friend who said, I grew up and it was the Orangeville Road because that road took me to Orangeville. And he said, no, it's the Fergus Road. Same sort of thing going on here. But the big question is, will it be approved? That is up in the air. And even this week in the House of Commons, Environment Minister John Wilkinson being asked about this and will you approve it now? And the best that he would say was, well, we haven't received a proposal on this, so we can't say anything about it. Well, the Trump administration has already seen enough that they're willing to approve it. So I have great difficulty, Hal, in believing that the Trudeau government has not seen enough that they would even be willing to say, well, maybe with some conditions, or we support the idea in principle, but we have some questions. It didn't even get to that point. It was like, well, we haven't seen anything, so therefore, it makes me wonder. And of course, there have been comments by the Prime Minister that allude to Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill, as I've been calling it for several years now, that would make you think they're never going to approve this. So this is a major question because, look, if you're from Yukon or Northwest Territories, you view this as a major opening up of your territory. And the MPs from that area are happy with this. And if you're from Northern Alberta, you're happy with this. It would basically go from Edmonton/Fort McMurray. It depends on where you decide that the end terminus is in Alberta, up through Northwest Territories, through Yukon, into Alaska to a place called, believe it or not, North Pole, where it would connect with existing Alaska Railway. That would then take it down to places like Anchorage, where you could get to tidewater. That has to be something that the Canadian government should want. Whether this government wants remains up in the air.
Even the North Pole, that means even Santa Claus is on board A2A Railway. Come on, Justin Trudeau, right? Brian, Suncor recently announced that up to 2,500 jobs could be lost as they reduce operations in Alberta. There hasn't been much reaction from the federal government so far, and the feds did, however, offer more than $300 million for electric vehicles in Ontario. Brian, why the difference here?
The difference is it's what they want to get behind. And look, so let me deal with these two different things at once in different segments here. So the Suncor announcement was Friday. I was speaking to Aaron O'Toole that day, doing an interview with him, and I'm doling that out in parcels through TorontoSun.com and elsewhere. And the fact of the matter is, O'Toole sees this as a major slap in the face to Western Canada, and he wants it dealt with. I haven't seen anything from the Prime Minister on this. They're not talking about this. This is not a major concern for them. I can't imagine a major employer in Ontario or Quebec dropping 2,500 jobs in a major industry and the government of the day not reacting. Now, as far as $300 million for electric vehicles in Ontario, that's $300 million from the feds and $300 million from the province. So it's going to be a $600 million investment. Now, you can be upset at Ontario if you want, but simple fact of the matter is the auto industry is moving towards electric vehicles. And if you're Ontario, you've got to get behind where your industry's going, and Alberta would do the same. But the federal government putting in $300 million for this, while turning a blind eye to Alberta, or even worse, giving the back of the hand to Alberta, is something that I just don't understand why they're doing it. And yet, as I'm listening to the debates in reply to the speech from the throne, this is something that goes on for a week or two after the throne speech, is different members of parliament get up and debate the issues. The Liberals just want to talk about, well, green energy. They don't want to talk about oil and gas. They don't care about oil and gas except about getting rid of oil and gas. And that's the path that they're on. You know, my colleague Laurie Goldstein writing in the Sun the other day saying, like, look, this is exactly what the Ontario Liberals did in the biggest province in the country several years ago. And now we're going to bring it national. It didn't work out well for Ontario. All of our bills went up. It's not going to work out well nationally either.
Brian, you know what's really interesting as well? I know a number of Tesla owners here in Alberta, and they say you don't want to put all of your eggs into the electric vehicle basket because in the wintertime, the charge and how far you go on a charge drops dramatically, about 50 to 60%, because you have to run your heater, and that takes up a lot of battery power. So they say in the wintertime, we'd rather drive our trucks or, you know, a gas-powered engine here. Now, Brian, we recently had Dan McTagg from Canadians for Affordable Energy in our program discussing a second carbon tax called the Clean Fuel Standard. Apparently, it could take about $500 out of the pocket of each Canadian. Brian, this new levy could be implemented as soon as the year 2022.
Yeah, and I've forgotten, or sorry, Dan McTagg, a former Liberal MP, now an energy guru. Dan has forgotten more about the energy file than I will ever know or remember. And, you know, I'm going to believe him when he says it will cost you about an extra $500 a year. You know, they're going after things like natural gas. You know, natural gas is supposed to be the clean, good fossil fuel. You know, as the Ontario government, I was doing a story on this earlier in the week, the Ontario government is changing regulations so that large commercial operations that are currently on oil or diesel can, you know, because of regulations now that prohibit them from doing it, can switch to natural gas. They're trying to make it easier to switch to natural gas because it will reduce emissions, it will reduce costs. There are so many good benefits from it. You can say that climate change is a complete hoax and still realize that switching from oil or diesel to natural gas is a good thing. And yet the Trudeau government still sees natural gas as a problem. That's a problem for your pocketbook. That's a problem for my pocketbook. That's a problem for everybody's across the country. You know, depending on the province that you live in, that can be one of the most commonly used fuel sources. It's a bit lower where you are in Alberta. It's a bit lower in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but in Ontario, homes heat with natural gas. About 75% of them heat with natural gas. That's the Liberal power base. In the areas of Quebec where they do very well, they heat with natural gas. You start jacking up people's power bills by $500, that's going to hit your voter base. So they better hope that they go to the polls and get a majority government before those bills start showing up, or they're going to be in trouble.
Brian, there's been a lot of time and energy spent on U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policies, and now they really impact us here in Canada. Now, his rival Joe Biden has already said if he is elected on November 3rd, he would cancel Keystone XL and bring in other policies really detrimental to Canada's energy sector. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, look, Hal, I've been at this game a long time, and I don't consider any American president to be a complete friend of Canada, but Republicans tend to be better for Canadians than Democrats when it comes to trade. Democrats tend to favor more protectionist policies. Republicans are generally more open. That's not always the case. I remember covering George W. Bush bringing in steel tariffs. Why? Because he needed Ohio. He needed some states that were steel producing areas. And their local representative said, we need this. Well, Barack Obama came in and he brought in Buy America provisions that were incredibly detrimental. He blocked Keystone XL. Donald Trump approved Keystone XL, which for the resource industry, for the oil and gas industry, amazing. That's a great thing, but it still hasn't made it all the way through. It hasn't been built. It's not operational yet, and the election's coming. Joe Biden says he would stop it. He would shut it down, even though it's getting closer and closer to completion every single day. But he's also talking about what would amount to tariffs on Canadian energy. You know, the Americans are our biggest customer. They're close to our only customer. Why? Well, because we can't build a west to east pipeline to sell to Europe. We can't build a pipeline to the coast or another pipeline to the coast, whether it's Northern Gateway or Trans Mountain, in order to sell to Asia. So we are reliant on selling to the Americans. And Joe Biden is saying that he will bring in what amount to carbon tariffs on this. These are bad news policies. Yes, Donald Trump has brought in steel and aluminum tariffs. Those are primarily to deal with the problem of what's called Chinese transshipment. They send products from China, be it aluminum or steel, into Canada or to Mexico. They give them a polish or two, and then they claim that they are from Canada or Mexico and send them to the States. It's a problem the Americans have told us about time and again, and we refuse to deal with it. And so they keep bringing in these tariffs.
Brian, the Liberals and the NDP stopped a Conservative motion to continue with the WE charity scandal investigation. Does this mean that the attempt to look into WE is all but dead?
No. In the short term, yes, but in the long term, no. So this was one specific committee that is supposed to look at the issue of why the House of Commons prorogued. And within 20 sitting days, the government is supposed to tell that committee why they shut down the House. And of course, the real reason is the WE charity scandal. That will never show up in the government report. They will never admit to that. So the Conservatives said, well, we want to call some witnesses. We want to demand some documents. And the Liberals said, oh, no, you can't do that. We just want to tell you why we prorogued, not the actual reason, but the reason that we want to tell you. It's all because of the WE charity scandal. The NDP unfortunately sided with them. The Bloc didn't. And so what do we end up with? Well, it's going to be a bit longer before committees get back into looking into this scandal that is ongoing. You know, since the House of Commons prorogued, WE Charity has announced that they are shutting down their Canadian operations. They're still going to operate in the United States. They're going to continue to operate in Africa, especially in Kenya, in a certain section of India, and in Ecuador. They're going to turn their Canadian operations into what amounts to an endowment fund. And recently they told me that that includes the many properties that they transferred to a private company in places like Kenya. So there are lots of questions to continue asking about the WE charity scandal. The Liberals don't want any of them asked, and unfortunately the NDP sided with the government for now, but that doesn't mean that it shut down forever. Expect this to come back in a week or two.
Brian, as we head into the Thanksgiving long weekend, the Liberals are opening up Canada's air travel once again. Many airports are seeing COVID-infected passengers arriving.
Yeah, and so, you know, depending on where you live in the country, you might have been told, well, the Prime Minister said, don't get together with your family for Thanksgiving, just stick with whoever's in your house right now. And your provincial government may have told you similar things depending on where you live. And there may be different rules depending on where you live. But we're going to open up, as of Thursday, we're going to open up the borders. Now, the Liberals are trying to claim that this is just for compassionate reunification, and there's some great cases for this. There is a Canadian woman who's been separated from her husband. Her name's Sarah Campbell. She has cancer. Her husband is American. They were on opposite sides of the border when things shut. And you know, outside of her going to the United States, where she couldn't get her cancer treatment, there was no way for them to reunite because the Canadian government wouldn't let her husband in. Meanwhile, they let in a multi-billionaire executive to fly in and look at her plants in the Toronto area, and then she flew out the next day. I don't know why that was allowed. But, you know, this claim that it's just compassionate reunification isn't accurate. They are going to be opening up the border dramatically. If you've got a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, someone that you've been in a a one-year relationship with, as well as their dependent or non-dependent children. You know, as I said in a recent column, I can't go see my mother for Thanksgiving, but she can fly my Uncle Frank over from Scotland and he can stay with her. Sure, he's got a quarantine for 2 weeks, but I'm sure he'd be happy with that because he gets my mother's cooking. So, you know, we've got all these different crazy rules going on, and I think all of it, when you look at, you know, municipal rules, provincial rules, and federal rules that don't align, I think it's leaving people wondering what's going on.
Tuesday marked the state funeral for former Prime Minister John Turner, an event held at Toronto's Catholic Cathedral amid COVID-19 restraints, but that was still marked and filled with expressions of faith. And what surprised me as well, Brian, is that John Turner was actually born in the United Kingdom.
He's born in England, and so I didn't know John Turner was a Catholic until I was writing his obituary. I just assume a name like Turner, he comes from England. Of course he's going to be Anglican. But no, he was deeply committed to his Roman Catholic faith. It's one of the reasons that his courtship with Princess Margaret had to end. I don't know if you heard about that, but he was, you know, his stepfather was the Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia back in the 1950s when Princess Margaret was doing a tour. He hadn't entered politics yet. They met at an event out in Vancouver area or Victoria, I can't remember. And all of a sudden the international papers were, you know, just abuzz with their romance. And, you know, here's a guy who, you know, ran track with Roger Bannister at Oxford, the man who beat the 4-minute mile. John Turner had an amazing life, but to watch it and be marked with such, you know, devoted expressions of faith was quite something. It was at St. Michael's Cathedral, the Catholic Cathedral in Toronto. Beautiful hymn sung, a beautiful mass, and beautiful eulogies for a man who gave so much to this country from his time entering politics in the early 1960s until he left in 1990, and then continuing on while he was in the private sector, always devoting himself in terms of a volunteer. So, requiesce in pace. Rest in peace.
And passes away at the tender age of 91. Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Many of you watching today have either experienced the tragedy of suicide in your own family or you know someone who has. Today's guest has an incredible, powerful story to share with us. Tamara LaRue is the co-founder of Life Change International and author of A Second Chance at Heaven, and she joins me now via Skype from Houston, Texas. Tamara, welcome to BCN.
Thank you, Hal. It's good to be here.
Can you briefly share your story? While still in high school, you tried to commit suicide. In reality, you should not be here with us today, right?
That's true. And anyone who has made it through high school knows that the ups and downs can be quite crazy every day in high school. And one of the things that we talk about is in my season of high school really didn't play a part, I don't believe, in my suicide. It was elongated. It was an elongated journey of feeling empty, feeling rejected over and over and over, ever since I was 4 years old, going through the brokenness of a home, going through just having a void that could not be filled. And high school certainly added to it with the ups and downs of the social acceptances. And I had a lot of friends in high school. And I was part of each group in high school. And so it was quite surprising to people because they did not know how I was silently suffering inside. And that's why I appreciate you allowing me to come on and share, because we have millions of people who are silently suffering in depression and contemplating suicide because they're so broken on the inside and they don't have anywhere to turn.
You know, psychologists I've spoken with in the past, they say when people talk about suicide all the time, those aren't the ones you should be concerned about. It's the ones who are quiet and you don't hear from.
That's true. And oftentimes psychologists label people who go through depression and suicide as a mental state, or it's a mental problem. And I personally disagree. I believe it is more of a spiritual problem before it becomes a mental and emotional problem. And until we address the spiritual issues that actually forms our thought process, and our thoughts form our emotions. And if we don't go down to the foundation of our spiritual condition, we will not be able to provide solutions for people who are suffering from depression.
Now, Tamara, you actually shot yourself. Where did you shoot yourself?
I did. I wanted Hal to definitely accomplish my goal. There was no turning back for me. I was in such a state of hopelessness and despair. I was so empty. I could not imagine living life any longer with the pain and agony I felt. And so I took a 38 caliber gun and I placed it at my heart. And that 38 caliber gun missed my heart less than a fourth of an inch.
Wow.
Say that it is an absolute miracle. They have no idea why I am alive and survived it.
Now, you actually saw heaven and hell?
I did, Hal. I actually, when I took that 38 caliber gun and placed it at my chest and the gun went off, I experienced becoming blind and becoming deaf. And my soul left my body and I began traveling faster than the speed of light. And I began falling and falling and falling. And I landed in this place. It was hell. And many people doubt that the place exists, but I am here to testify that it is a very real place. And it is a place of torment that you cannot explain. The emotional pain that I was in is not even a speck of sand compared to the torment that is in that place. It is horrific. There are no words to describe the suffering. It was every molecule of my being was being tortured. It was like an acidic burn that was being poured all over my head from the inside out and the outside in. And all you could do was scream in agony and in being tortured.
Now, you also got a glimpse of heaven as well. And did you see Jesus?
That's the biggest question everyone always asks me is, did I see Jesus? You know, when you are outside of your body, the veil of the physical world is ripped off. And my knowledge was made complete. I knew who God was. I knew that Jesus Christ was the King. I knew from that point on that everything that I was experiencing was because of the absence of his presence. I could look out across the great divide and I could see heaven. I could see all of heaven and I could see the Lord upon the throne, but I was not allowed to see things in detail. And I was crying out and screaming out in agony for the Lord to send somebody back to earth to tell them the truth. And everybody around me, there were people all through hell that you could see as far as the eye would take you that were screaming out in the same capacity. And the only thing that mattered was that Jesus Christ was Lord. I knew every sin that they had committed. I knew their lineage. I knew where they were from. Every knowledge, all I had to do was think a thought and my knowledge was made full. And so when I could look out again across and I could see the heavens, I knew that the very presence of God himself was what my heart was longing for. And I cried out for that and begged God to forgive me.
So Tamara, when you took that gun, put it to your chest, pulled the trigger, your mother found you? What happened when she did?
She did. She came in and she found me, and it was no mother should ever have to go through. It was horrific for her. And when she found me, she called the ambulance. And when they got there, they were like, are you even going to bother to take her to the hospital? Because I was gray with the pallor of death. But what they didn't know was that I had left hell. God had actually picked me up when I was there, took me across the heavens, and had brought me back. And so now I was alive and I was filled with hope because I knew the truth. And my mom was absolutely devastated. And I was reassuring her that everything is going to be okay. And she was like, no, you're dying. And I was like, no, I'm okay. Because I knew I had already experienced death and had been given a second chance to live.
Wow. Now, you write in your book, A Second Chance at Heaven, that there was nothing unusual about the day you finally decided to kill yourself. What led to that decision finally? Was it the depression? No escape?
It was the no escape. It was the reality that no matter what I do, no matter what I try, the void on the inside of me will not go away. I cannot fill this void because I didn't understand that it's a relationship with God. It's this presence of the Holy Spirit that actually fills that void. And I knew God existed, but I didn't have that relationship. I didn't surrender my heart to his lordship. And I didn't understand it's the pursuit of righteousness that fills that void. And so being desperate, I had decided that I don't know what will fill this void, and I cannot live life this empty, this broken, and in torment forever.
Now, you say that your father never totally rejected you, but his actions left a distinct impression. How so?
Well, he was busy. He was a father of 6 children, and he was at work. He was a workaholic. He worked all the time. I lived in a different city. And when I was around him, it was all about work. It was all about the other kids. It was all about his schedule. And I never felt like I belonged. I always felt like a stranger in my own house because of that lack of connection that I had with my father and with the rest of my family.
Now, there are many young people who feel overwhelmed by the circumstances of life, Tamara. Why do some people find ways to cope with it while others struggle? What do you think?
I believe it's the spiritual foundation that each individual has, where they know where to turn to, when they know that God not only listens, but he definitely answers prayer. I believe it's having people that are encouraging you to follow after righteousness. And people who do not have that end up going down a farther darker end because they don't have the answer. And the answer isn't, oh, just go to church, learn about God. The answer is get on your knees and develop a relationship with God. And I believe those who are able to overcome depression, overcome suicidal thoughts, are those who understand how to take the word and renew their mind and become transformed by the power of God's word.
Recent statistics say that suicide is up among women in North America. Why do you believe it's increasing?
I believe there's several factors that are involved in why it is increasing. I believe we're having an identity crisis. Women don't know where to find their identity. When you have pornography on a rise, you have drug addiction on a rise, you have sexual abuse on a rise in astronomical numbers. Women are looking at Hollywood. They think that they're supposed to be sex symbols. They find their identity through a career and through a job. And through these misconcepts, these false perceptions, they don't know that their identity is found in Christ. It's found in their Creator. And I believe that causes a deep depression because they don't have a sense of belonging, a sense of value. And when you realize the love that God has for you, the value that you have in God, it completely changes your perception.
Now, as you look back, is there anything your mom or friends could have done differently to prevent you from taking the action that you did?
I don't believe so because, as I was saying earlier, my problem was more spiritual before it was mental and emotional. And until I took full responsibility of who and what I choose to become, the choice is mine, life and death. And until I chose life, I was suffering on the inside. And there is no relationship, there is no human being that can meet my spiritual needs. It only comes through the Holy Spirit and through Christ. And so I can't expect other people to fulfill the need that only God can fill.
Tamara, let me ask you something. Do you have children yourself? And if so, how old are they?
I do. I have 3 children. I have a grown son who's in his early 30s, and I have 2 teenage girls.
There you go. So what message would you give to your teenage girls so they don't take the same path that you took?
I encourage them that they are loved, to know how much they are loved, not only by me, not only by the words of the people around them, but by who their Creator is. I teach them value, and I teach them to follow the words of truth and righteousness and not what people say.
How does a person's belief system really impact their quality of life?
I think it makes a complete difference. Their quality of life, whether you choose life or you choose death, you choose poverty, whatever you're choosing in life determines your thought process. And when you are a Christ follower and you believe his promises, you believe that he has promised to have goodness for you laid out. It doesn't mean we're not going to go through difficult situations. It doesn't mean we're not going to go through trials and through problems. But those promises are real. And when you believe in those promises, then you have hope. You have your answer. You know that no matter what you're facing, goodness is on the other side. And when you don't have that source, you don't have anything solid to stand on.
When you tried to take your own life, did you notice that people treated you differently, maybe kept their distance, or were they more supportive?
Absolutely, we're not more supportive. The stigma of suicide stuck with me for a really long time, even today, because I am so vocal upon it. But I know the truth, and knowing the truth truly sets you free. And I don't live by the opinion of men. I live to the audience of one. And knowing that it is my goal is to please my Heavenly Father, is to please my Lord and Savior, gives me the confidence to go forward. It gives me the ability to look past people's judgment and look at them from compassion because they don't understand. And those that have walked this journey understand. And so it opens up an opportunity for me to share how to overcome on a every basic day-to-day level, overcoming the problems of life, and being able to take the word and apply it in a realistic sense, and not it be some fairy tale, but that it's real.
Now, the name of your book is called A Second Chance at Heaven. You say we all need second chances, Tamara. What would you say to a person struggling with self-esteem or a sense of hopelessness?
I would tell them that there is an answer, and the answer is found in not knowing that God is real, but surrendering your heart to His Lordship, picking up the Word and finding every promise that God has made to you and believing in it, believing that it is for you, believing that you're loved, because there is a solution to every problem that you are going through. And there are greener pastures on the other side.
And what advice would you give to parents who have teenagers who may also have suicidal tendencies or thoughts?
I would encourage them to lead their children in having a relationship with God, teaching them to go to the scriptures, studying the scriptures, reading the book of Proverbs, reading Psalms, reading those scriptures that tell us how to live life, give us the instructions of life, showing us how to love, and being able to open our hearts to receive God's love, and instructing their children in the ways of righteousness, because that is truly where the answers are found, is in following after righteousness.
Tamara LaRue is the author of A Second Chance at Heaven. Thanks for joining me today via Skype from Houston, Texas.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.